Well, welcome and thank you for joining us this bright and shining morning. My player has got his cup of coffee. I already drank my tea, but I promise to have more in the future. What you are seeing or hearing today is what I am affectionately referring to as Brunches and Dragons, Dungeons and Dragons. What we're going to be doing this morning is what I'm thinking of as a grand experiment. So, my player has come prepared with a character at levels 1, 3, and 5, and I have come completely unprepared with anything, and I'm just going to make everything up on the spot. He's going to describe his character, and then I'm going to tell a story. We're going to do it together, and I'm a little bit nervous because normally I plan everything out. I think this is something that I want to try and do. There's a bit more backstory to it, which I might do on a separate stream. And the reason I've got this particular player with me today is he is our Like Seven Spoons resident rules scholar, and so I don't have to worry about the rules because he knows everything, and that's going to be fine. So I can just concentrate on the story and trying to get those concepts out. But if this is successful, we'll keep doing it. I've already got a couple other players lined up that wanna try this, and so we'll have at least a couple of these, I think. I'm willing to answer any questions. I've got a moderator in chat, not Luthera, who can answer a couple of questions. Anything he can't answer, I'll address at the end of the stream or in Twitter. And I think that's about it. Would you like to introduce yourself and/or your character, sir?
Sure. I'm Nate. I usually go by TechSoup in various corners of the internet. I play entirely too much D&D. I write fancy letters for fun. And I am also in how many of your campaigns? Two?
You're in two
Yours,
of mine.
and then you're in one of mine, right?
Yep.
And
And
then
then
for
you're
profit, someone else's.
right, and you're helping me run Broken Bane.
Right. So entirely too much D&D.
Yes.
Got it. Yeah.
Fun. Yeah. Oh, before you introduce your character, I forgot about a small rant I wanted to go on. So
Sure.
I'm gonna do that real quick.
Rant away.
Today is the anniversary of the 30th anniversary of the ADA, or the American Disabilities Act. It's been 30 years since that became a thing, and I still have to jump through hoops to get closed captions on my streams. I have to jump through hoops to get audio descriptions in my movies. I have to jump through hoops to get my playing materials accessible to screen readers or to Switch control users, and that is a damn shame. We had to have a global pandemic before things could go online, which makes them accessible to a large degree of the disabled community. I myself am disabled. I have autism, and I am autistic, and I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user, and suffer very pathetically with a bunch of chronic pain. And I think that sucks. I think it's great what we've done over the past 30 years. There's a lot of reading everybody can do on Twitter. I'm sure I'll be retweeting all of that today. There's a lot of really interesting history in it that involves the Black Lives Matters movement and other fun historical data. Definitely look that up. And I want to see us do better in the next 30 years. And I like to think that myself and my small community are going to we're just gonna fix it. We'll just fix it. Yeah, just give me like 30 years and I'll fix it. Okay. So that's my rant. If anybody has any questions about it, let me know. Rant over. Anything else you'd like it to introduce you about yourself, Tech?
No, I think we're good. I think we can just do the thing.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and introduce your character to both the stream and to me for the very first time?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Great.
I will be playing Zephyr, who is a air genasi. Generally pale skin, but sometimes there are kind of flashes of white that brush across it. Both sides of his head are shaved. He has kind of the windswept mohawk thing going on.
Nice.
Wears a lot of vests for no particularly good reason.
So is he a sharp dresser, or he just has a vest?
He goes like full Aladdin. It's just vests
Nice.
all day,
All right.
every day.
Great. Okay. Perfect. And are they like fancy vests, or are they like Aladdin vests, where it's just kind of a vest?
It depends on the occasion. Some
So he
days,
does dress up.
your standard vest, but um,
All right.
if the occasion calls for it, there's some with some fancy lining. There's some white and gold going on. It's all aesthetic.
Okay. All right. Are there any colors he avoids?
Not a huge fan of the oranges.
Mm-hmm.
Jewel tones tend to play well.
Okay.
Um, your pastels, not as much.
Right. Very pale. Okay. Cool. So we know what he looks like. Any other distinctive features about him?
I mean, Air Genasi are kind of uncommon in general,
Mm-hmm.
so that is fairly distinctive in its own right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he also tends to wear a specific pendant that has three branches on it.
Okay.
They're all the same color, and it's a really pale kind of purple.
Okay. Well, this player knows that the GM is obsessed with purple, so I'm sure that has nothing to do with that choice.
No reason whatsoever.
Just teasing. Okay. That is a really good detail for me to know, and I am gonna take a quick note.
Cool.
Air
Doesn't worry
Genasi,
me at all.
3 branch pendant, and vests. I think is good. All right. Now, what is this fine gentleman's name?
Zephyr.
And what would you say his the word just escaped me. Okay, his name is Zephyr. I got it. All right. What would you say his circumstances are right now? Is he on his way somewhere? Is he just finishing up with something? Does he have a profession?
I'd say he's probably just finishing up with something as far as
Okay.
professions are concerned. I think um, vagabond is probably the most accurate description.
All
Likes
right.
to kind of go where the wind blows because I'm punny.
Yeah. Which I don't hate horribly. Yeah. Um, and his vagabond state and just finishing up with stuff. Would you say that it's possible that the thing he just sorry, not Luther is very upset about the fact that I just let a pun slide by. Would you say that his vagabond state and the idea that he's just finishing up with something might indicate that let me think. Let's say, is he a thief?
I wouldn't say that's beyond what he has done historically. I don't think he kind of considers himself that. He considers it more of a liberating things for his benefit, not like Robin Hood, steal from the rich, give to the poor, as much as this is here and I need it more than you do, so it's
Okay.
fine if I take it. Um, if
All right.
alignments mattered in fifth edition, it'd probably be chaotic neutral,
Mm-hmm.
which is chaotic stupid
Mm-hmm.
traditionally, and it's like what rogues do to stab people.
Yeah.
Uh, but in his case, it's a more things are convenient for me, and sometimes I'll do nice things, and sometimes I do things that aren't nice, and kind of depends on the situation.
And I like to think of, I like to, I like to, if I said that he's always been able to get himself out of trouble, do you think that would be true so far?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
So,
Uh,
do you think he might be a little bit arrogant about that? That he always thinks he can get himself out of trouble?
I wouldn't say it's so much that he's arrogant about that as much as he's arrogant in general.
Okay. So, what if we say, and when he's in towns, does he? I don't know a lot about Air Genasi. Does he like sleep in a bed? Like, would he stay in an inn? Would he sleep on a rooftop? Like, what's his deal?
I'd say rooftops are kind of the go-to for him. Like being under roofs in general is kind of weirdly uncomfortable. You
Okay.
feel disconnected from the sky, as it were.
Yep.
And fun fact about Air Genasi is that they can levitate themselves whenever they feel like it, basically. So getting to rooftops is a fairly simple ordeal for him.
Okay. So let's say, um, and does he have a particular affinity for daytime or nighttime?
Um, I'd say daytime is probably the go-to.
So,
Um,
so the end of a day would have natural feelings of not quite sadness, but sort of a somberness to it.
yeah, I'd say that. That's pretty accurate.
Okay. I think I just interrupted something you were going to say.
Don't think so. You're
Okay.
good. Carry on.
So let's say, and if daytime is more of an affinity, then season wise that would be tied traditionally to the summertime. But would his season be would he prefer a different season? Would you say?
No, I'd say the spring summer kind of traditional association with daytime and seasons holds pretty accurate in this case.
All right. So what if we say it is one of those oddly crisp summer days where if you'd just woken up out of a 20-year sleep, you would think it was spring, but because you're a thinking being, you know it's the herald of autumn. Let's say the sun is just touching the horizon at the end of a long day. You've traveled quite far to be in this particular town. You think yourself quite out of trouble, and you are settling in on the rooftop of a moderately prosperous inn. It's not a carousing inn. Soldiers do not frequent this inn. It's one of those inns that merchants stay at, which might afford you some opportunities in the morning.
Convenient, yeah.
And this inn has a bunch of eaves, so there's a spot between two of them where and the roof dips up in front of you that you can sort of make yourself comfortable there without anybody seeing you, but still have an open sky above you. Does that
Yeah,
sound
gotcha. Mm-hmm.
all right?
Sounds about right.
You're watching the sun touch the horizon. You're watching that strange color bleed when it starts to dip below, where it almost seems like the sun is melting into the horizon and melding with it.
Yeah, the gloaming. Love
The
it.
gloaming, yes, I love the gloaming. The pieces of the night that begin to weave with that melting of the sun are starting to gather around you. Your energies are lowering and relaxing. You are beginning to settle into a resting state,
Mm-hmm.
and you're comfortable. You've been well fed. The exercise you've had on this trip has not been too much. It's been just the right amount. You feel pleasantly tired.
Yeah.
All right. As this is happening, you hear a commotion down in the yard. Now, because I think because how suspicious is Zephyr? If he hears a commotion, is he immediately going to go investigate?
I don't
Or
know if we'd say so much investigate as much as kind of hang out in a convenient spot to watch for possible amusement and or opportunities.
so eyes on it, not just listening.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
eyes on it, but not necessarily involving himself.
So what you see is a you see somebody ride up on a pretty good horse, not a fancy horse. This is not a noble born.
Uh-huh.
See, you started punning, and now Not Luther is just going to be the
The
worst.
worst, yeah.
So we're just going to ignore him. Chat, you enjoy Not Luther. We're
I
just
slid
gonna.
one in and I did this to us.
You
I'm
did,
sorry.
yeah. So this gentleman rides up, and he seems to be leaning over in a saddle, and he's speaking to the stable boy, who's reaching out to grab the reins. The horse is jerking its head away, but calms as the rider absentmindedly pats its neck. The stable boy points back to the inn, shrugs, points back to the stable. The rider straightens up, looks around, gets down off his horse, hands the reins to the boy, says something, and then walks off. The boy looks up at the horse who's looking down at him. The boy starts to walk towards the stable. The horse doesn't move. The boy pulls a little bit. Horse doesn't move. Doesn't even seem to notice the little boy. The boy comes back. There's a pause. You hear some muttering. And then the boy goes towards the water trough and the horse follows him. And as you watch, the horse goes to the water trough and then goes to stand in the leeward side of the stable, so he's not in the wind. And basically the boy just gets dragged around by this horse. The boy is not actually watching the horse. The horse is just doing whatever it wants. Meanwhile, the rider has gone into the inn. Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Can I hear any of what transpired between rider and stable boy? Or
yeah, how good is Zephyr's hearing? Is this something that he's particularly known for?
I wouldn't say it's something he's particularly known for, no. If you want to talk mechanics, his passive perception isn't super high. So
yeah, given that, what I would say is on top of a 2-story building, because they weren't trying to talk very loudly, I'm not sure. I don't think you would hear anything. I think what you would hear instead as a being of the wind is more impressions. The impressions you get are the boy just wants to do his job. The rider is looking for something. But that's not uncommon. This is a stop on a town. He might have a meeting here. He might be looking for a particular merchant. There's nothing really to alarm you.
cool. And looking down, it's just stable boy getting dragged around by a horse.
Yes.
Cool. How far away are the stable boy and horse from the actual stable?
Let's say that the stable is actually built up against the side of the inn. So the inn faces right out onto the street, and then there's it's actually a walled-in courtyard. And so the door to the yard, the stable boy has gone over and closed, and they keep that closed at night. And so the inn faces out onto the street. If you're standing and looking at the inn, to the right is where the stable yard is. You walk into the stable yard, and it goes 3/4 of the way the length of the inn building, and then the stable starts. So it's quite a large inn. Mm-hmm. There's an entrance to the inn on the side as well, so you can stable your horse, and then you don't have to go all the way back and around. This is a 2.5-story inn, so they've actually got storage up in the attics. They store soft goods and things there. And so the boy is being dragged around the yard. The horse takes a drink of water and then goes and stands over by the stable. He doesn't try to go into the stable, but you do notice that the horse is keeping an eye on the door and the entrance to the yard. So the horse has kind of got his back up to a wall, so he can't be snuck up on.
So the horse's back is to the wall, but it's vaguely near the entrance to the stable, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, that is exactly what you're hearing.
Being the vaguely mischievous creature that Zephyr is, and feeling slightly bad for the stable boy, he will kind of snap his fingers and cast Minor Illusion and make the sound of a roaring owl bear behind the bear to try and spook it into the stable.
Behind the horse?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay, so stream. I'm not going to use dice very much. That's kind of the point. Or not kind of the point. That's something that I'm going to try to do. You'll notice that Tech referenced mechanic. I do have character sheets for him, so that we can. This kind of helps us make these kinds of decisions. I'm going to use dice the same way, more as a coin flip than anything else.
Dice as agents of chaos. Yeah.
Yes, dice as agents of chaos. The horse starts. So I want you to imagine that this horse is not a delicate palfrey. It is a stocky, warrior, if anything else. Its tack looks comfortable and well worn, but sturdy, and its mane and tail are like a useful length. They're not too long. Like it helps keep flies off, but that's it.
Sure.
As he starts, his hindquarters bunch up, and his front hooves like jump forward about 6 inches, and then he freezes, and because horses have full vision, they just
Sure
have a
do.
weird blind spot in the front and a weird blind spot in the back. And he tilts his head a little bit to the left and can see that there's nothing behind him. And his ears are flipping back and forth because it can hear their roaring, but it does not move. The boy is freaking out. Because he hears it too, right?
Oh yeah.
So he freaks out. It basically drops the reins, runs towards the stable, realizes he drops the reins, runs back. The horse snorts at him. There's still the roaring, and he disappears into the stable. So now there's just a horse with reins dropped on the ground.
I mean, that's unfortunate. Is there anyone else around visibly?
There is not. Does the roar continue?
No, it'll stop after a second.
Okay.
So we have an abandoned horse, and does it look like it's moving? Does it look like it's staying in place?
It is no longer, its muscles are no longer locked. Once it identifies there's nothing behind it except the wall that it thought was there, its ears are still sort of flipping around because it looks with its ears as well. But it is in a rested state again. It's not asleep. It doesn't have like one loose leg when they sort of like stand on 2 or 3 legs. But it is just standing there. He appears alert.
Sure. So, given that the horse is A, obviously stubborn, and B, apparently nonplussed by owl bears, I think he will briefly consider swooping down, and, horses are valuable, especially those, and you could totally sell that and make a decent amount of money, except this one looks problematic, and there's a stable boy right there, and technically you didn't make anything worse, but you also didn't make anything better, so all things considered, net neutral, the world will carry on, and we can go back to chilling in our spot in the eaves.
Okay. Let's see. How much would you have investigated this roof before you settled down here?
Not too terribly thoroughly. Like, it's a roof. No one goes on roofs. It's fine.
Okay, so... All right. Can you roll me a d20 and tell me what the number is?
Cool.
Hi, Moons.
That is a 13.
A 13. Okay. As you are settled on the roof and you are you're settling right in, you've identified all the noises around you. There's the sound of people in the building underneath you. There's the occasional stomp of a horse hoof. You've identified that noise. You can hear the stable boy moving around in the yard again. You might have checked on that to make sure that was there. You can hear the sounds of the town around you. It's a mid-sized town. You can hear the sounds of the town sort of shutting down, like folks settling in for the evening. And then as you're settling in there, you are grabbed. What do you do?
I think the immediate response is to try and levitate away from that.
Okay. So the person grabbing you, what is levitation? How does that work? Like, do you go incorporeal like Moira, or do you stay corporeal and just levitate up into the air?
You stay very corporeal and you kind of start rising into the air. It goes straight vertical, and it can't go more than like 20 feet at a time.
Okay. Roll me
Uh,
a... No, go ahead.
no, that's a mechanics thing that super doesn't matter in the moment. So carry on.
No, so the mechanics help me with the story. Go ahead and roll a d20 for me.
Even 10. Because I'm here to make your life difficult.
No, actually.
Oh boy.
I rolled an 11. Um, you rise straight up in the air. And this is a quick movement, right? Like you zip.
Yeah, it is within the time frame of 6 seconds. So yeah.
Great. Okay, so you're zipping up in the air, and you slide right out of this whoever's grabbed you, but you realize he's still trying to grip you as you're rising, and as he gets down to your ankles, you feel something snap around your ankle, and you thud right back down onto the roof.
Well, that's a fucking problem.
And in front of you is a gentleman, and he's the same gentleman. He's the rider from the horse. And he says, I've been looking for you for a long time, but I've got you now. The faction wants to speak to you.
I mean, that doesn't seem super necessary. I mean, I feel like we can probably work something out. And I mean, I saw you down there with the stable boy, and you had a horse, and your horse seems really nice, and I totally didn't take it this time, though I really did think about it. So really, we can probably just come to some kind of arrangement where you go on your way, I go on mine, and the faction, whatever that is, doesn't need to get involved. It's great.
You're going to come with me. And he starts to walk away, and you realize that there's a shackle on your ankle, and it doesn't have a chain, but it is glowing very faintly, which to you means there's enough power in it that it's bleeding over into the visual world. And it doesn't hurt, but you don't like it. Sorry, Tyler said that they were waiting for me to toss out my version of Cletus, which
No,
is
I
from
saw
a
it. It's great.
Bard and Barbarian stream yesterday. There's just no way. No, sorry. I can't do
Cletus
Cletus.
was amazing, though.
Cletus is amazing and shall be forever memorialized by Bard and Barbarian, which is another great stream. Y'all should check it out. So he starts to walk away, and there's a force that is compelling you to move. Can you roll me another d20?
I super can. Good. I'm channeling Luth. That is a 3.
Great. Okay, so you are compelled. You start following him. He leads you around to. I mentioned this was a 2.5 story. There's a little half door onto the roof, probably to clear off snow. This is an area that still gets snow, and he's gonna gesture you towards the door. You realize that the whatever is compelling you to follow him only compels you to follow him. It doesn't compel you to obey his every order.
So he gestures towards the door, but I don't feel compelled to actually go towards the door.
Yeah.
And are the shackles attached to anything that I can see, or
Not that
is
you
it
can see.
just the shackles?
Yeah, it's just one shackle around we'll say your right ankle.
Cool. I think.
And I think it has a peculiar kind of weight to it for you. It's tough to say whether it would feel this heavy to somebody that wasn't an air genasi, but this isn't. It's your foot is sort of dragging as you're walking.
Can I tell what it's made of, or does the weird glowing kind of obscure that?
It's a metal. Well. It's a stone, actually.
Well,
Yeah.
that's unfortunate.
Yeah. And it is a stone. How much does Zephyr know about his own heritage?
I mean, I think being a genasi, there is some kind of primordial, almost genie heritage
Mm-hmm.
there. But I don't know if it's something that he, as a humanoid, has ever actively investigated.
Okay, so would it be safe to say that he wouldn't necessarily know of any materials that are particularly antithetical to him?
Um, I mean, I think from kind of lived experience, there's some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I don't know if he has a catalog of avoid these materials or you suffer. He's not like a fae that's like, hey, you should avoid iron because that's going to ruin your life.
Okay. All right, then he can recognize that it's some sort of metallic rock, or sorry, some sort of rock, that it's not metallic. But I think that's all he'd pick up.
Um, so, fun fact, he is super smart.
Okay.
So I think, um, given that he kind of sees this as his window to be flighty, he's going to reach down and grab the shackle and cast a ray of frost into it with the intention of trying to freeze it enough to break out.
I like it. Do it.
What am I rolling?
Well, why don't you go ahead and roll to attack the shackle?
Mm-hmm.
Let's roll at a disadvantage unless you're totally okay with dealing damage to yourself.
Um, I am super okay with dealing damage to myself, actually.
Well, then we'll roll it as a. Oh, I don't know why I phrased that sentence that way. Just roll straight. Just roll once.
Straight roll. Okay. That is a 14.
So I think the ray of frost hits the shackle.
Uh-huh.
But instead of damaging it, it makes the shackle extremely cold,
Uh-huh.
and the cold starts like from the shackle creeping up and down your leg. So
Great.
within moments, your foot feels frozen, and
This is excellent.
it's a stillness that you have trouble. It's I think it would be a little panicking to Zephyr because it's a stillness that is has nothing to do with being an air genasi. It's it's an opposite. You do not like this.
Yeah, it is antithetical to the like windswept feelings of freedom and all of that.
And it's creeping up to your knee, and the gentleman turns around, sees what you've done, and laughs, and says, "Good luck. I don't know how to turn that off, so we better start moving." The ice gets above your knee, and
Sure.
is getting into your thigh. How do you react?
Um, I think it's kind of a vague form of panic.
Mm-hmm.
And the usual response to panic is, "Hey, let's get into the sky where there's clouds, there's wind, and everything is fantastic." Only that isn't an option either, so that kind of reinforces the panic. And it's not quite like a full-on panic attack, but he is very clearly having issues, and the kind of pale blue that his skin usually is kind of goes like sheet white.
The gentleman in front of you is chuckling. You're getting no sympathy from him, and as the ice visibly and like hardens the all the muscles in your legs, you realize that there are hard tendrils creeping up towards your heart. So the tendrils deeper in your near your bones and stuff are traveling faster than what's creeping up your leg, and you realize those tendrils are already up into your chest and are just seconds from touching the core of you, which would be terrible. What do you do?
Um, Feeling otherwise helpless. I think it's just kind of the kind of frantic, like flailing at your chest and like,
Yeah, would he be sort of like like trying
yeah,
to claw it out, kind of, or
yeah,
like brush it
basically,
off?
yeah, yeah. It's the like clawing at your chest, kind of trying to push this away because everything is terrible right now and I hate my life.
So for that dream people have that where they're falling and they wake up as if they've hit the ground and they're absolutely terrified.
Yep.
You have the opposite. You're not claustrophobic necessarily. What would the opposite of like the worst dream for you be? I think it's something around stillness. What can you explore that any, or I can just move on.
Yeah.
But
No, I think kind of the opposite of that is, um, the earth elemental thing where they just kind of meld into stone, or
uh huh,
druids do that.
uh huh.
That is the opposite. That is the special hell where there's just rock everywhere. You can't go anywhere, and it's not like super protective in the way that elementals and druids think it is. It is more constraining and mostly terrifying.
Okay, so those are the feelings that are just consuming you as this tendril touches your heart, and you're
Excellent. Cool.
you're beside yourself. You're all, like, if you could be anywhere but here, you would be. And between one moment and the next, uh, you don't even blink. Just between the space of a second and the next second, that very tiny space in between, which is a place you live comfortably, moving
Sure.
between those odder spaces in time and air, you realize you are no longer standing in front of this gentleman. Instead, there is a very feminine form. She is bending over you. You are seated, and her nose is right up against your nose, and she seems to be peering at you as if she's looking for something.
Do I still feel a weird tendrils climbing into my heart,
No,
or the weird stone things around my right ankle?
you feel completely normal.
And her nose is like right there, right?
Right there. Like, it should be touching. It's right there.
He will try and kind of lean back in the seat and like, cool. So this is new and different. I don't see the dude anymore, and you have a poor concept of personal space. So I'd really appreciate it if we could, do something about that. But if it's all the same to you, I'm just gonna kind of go.
As you're leaning back, as soon as you move, her eyes open real wide, and her smile is just the biggest and teeth-filled smile you've ever seen, and the teeth are sharp in a way that you can't quite explain. They're not filed, they're not pointed, they're very sharp. How good are you
Oh,
with like
yep, cool.
yeah? How good are you with like facial expressions and shit? How good is Zephyr with that?
That he's actually fairly good at
This
from
facial
an inside standpoint.
this facial expression gives you the wibbly wobblies. There is a weird amount of menace, and there's a delight there that does not bode well for you. And at the same time, a kind of a mothering thing, all rolled into this smile does not make you feel great. And she doesn't move. She stays in her bent over position. So if you leaned back forward, you could touch noses, and she's just grinning at you through your speech. When
Sure.
when you get to the end, she says, "No, thank you," and then she stands up. You realize that she is very petite in a way. She has very long hair that floats. Then you realize she's floating. You can't quite pin down what she's wearing, but whatever it is pink. It's not that it's like big and bulky. It's just that it's almost like she's not wearing clothes, like, but she's not naked. She's just, it doesn't seem to matter. But there's lots of pale pinks and pale oranges, and things like that. She
Yeah, sure.
she drifts back a little further. What do you do?
Kind of scanning the room. Is there any door? Is there an exit? What does the room around me look like?
It doesn't look like any room you've ever been in before. It it doesn't really. It's almost like you've been placed inside a cloud of pink, and yet it doesn't. It's not like the room is soft. It's just like it's not. It's nothing there. And it would be terrifying to you if you weren't an air genasi. This is just, you're used to moving through space a very different way than somebody who expects to walk on floors and walls.
Sure.
And when you're looking around the room, actually, your eyes almost slide, in your mind almost slide past the idea that that you're in a room, and you feel comfortable in a way that, if you take a moment to think about it, feels as if you're just in the sky, if that makes sense.
Yeah, super does. So would it be fair to say that there isn't really a strong compulsion of being trapped or feeling like one would need to leave?
Yes, and in fact, well, roll me a d20.
Oh boy. Okay. That is a 6.
Okay. The biggest difference between this space and the one you were just occupying is the one you were just occupying was full of panic, and you were trapped, and there's literally nothing you could do, which has never happened to you before. And now you're in a space where you don't feel trapped. I think that's the amount of subtlety you get out of a 6.
Cool. Great.
Yeah. So you looked around. Did you want to say anything else, or?
I mean, I think kind of looking around and realizing he's not where he was, and this is actually a fairly comfortable space. It's more of a, and I really appreciate that I'm not where I was, and that's real cool. Don't know how you did it. Kind of really don't care. And as cool as this place is, because it's real cool. Kind of like it. Dig the digs. But yeah, still totally cool going. Have the best time.
She tilts her head over to the side in a way that is not humanoid. It's not like a broken neck way, but just, it's like she occupies space very differently. And you recognize it in an odd way because you occupy space very differently, but it's not like you occupy space at all. This is not an air genasi. You know that right out of the bat.
Sure. Also, I need to stop letting you plan my campaigns because this is creepy as shit, but fine.
Sorry.
No, it's great. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I had some weird dreams last night. You're getting the brunt of them. I apologize.
Fantastic. Carry on.
And she says, "No, thank you." And there's a moment of silence that is both comfortable, but in a way you feel sort of, it almost feels like residual terror, but you realize it isn't residual, but you also realize you can't feel it. You're just feeling comfortable. And she takes several tiny steps through the air forward. And you realize you're standing, and she's right up to your nose, and her feet are like how tall is Zephyr?
I'd say he's probably fairly average height. Probably, 5'9", 5'10" or so.
Yeah, so her feet are like 6 inches off the floor. Like, she rises up a little bit to come nose to you. And she says, "I want you to do something for me. And I will do something for you."
Some give and take. Cool. I'm fine with that. Depends on the something. Like, I mean, there are rules and lines here, probably, to some extent.
You get that grin again.
cool. Maybe less of the smiling that make me feel more comfortable. I mean, not that this place isn't comfortable because it super is, but just maybe slightly less of that. But yeah, deals. Totally down. What are you feeling? What do you need? More importantly, what are you going to get for me? Because I like things.
So the distance she is from your nose, she stays, but she drifts around you in a circle, and then she backs up and she says, I like you. I think I would like to keep you.
See, as far as deals go, like, kind of not down with that one. Feel like we could probably maybe negotiate something else, or, I mean,
She
literally
says,
anything else.
she says, well, do you like power?
I mean, I have a hard time picturing people who don't, but feel like that's kind of a universal experience. I mean,
I can
yes,
give
short
you.
answer, yeah.
I can give you power. She drifts forward again, and you said you were wearing a pendant, right?
Yep.
And she stretches her hand forward, and she touches one finger to the place where the branches like come out of
Mm-hmm.
the pendant, and you're frozen. You can't move, but not in a panicky way, and you're looking at this. You can see her touch the pendant, so you can see that nothing visually changes about the pendant.
Sure.
But what you feel is that the branches are suddenly spreading out and wrapping all like winding all the way down your body to touch the anklet. Anklet?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a word?
It is.
Does it mean what I think it means?
Probably not.
The thing on your ankle.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. It winds in a weirdly meandering pattern down there. And again, nothing visually, you just feel this. And then you visually see the branches the way that they are in the pendant in the three. Anklet is a bracelet on your ankle. Okay, yeah, that is what I
Yeah.
thought. Whatever. It's like a shackle ankle thingy. Anyway, you see the branches, the same sort of pattern, but not the three branches pattern, but the three branches as unique things start winding around the shackle. And instead of being like a very squared off stone shackle, it is now as if the shackle was remade with the pieces of your pendant.
Okay.
And the power coming off it feels exactly like something you can use, but it is much more powerful than you are used to. And then she leans back and she says, how's that? And you suddenly feel stronger.
Sure.
You realize you know things that you didn't know before. And you realize whatever else happens when you're level 2 or 3.
Bunches of stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. But you feel stronger. You feel faster. You feel smarter. You feel
Harder, better, faster, stronger.
yes, all of those things.
Cool.
And she's watching you realize all of this. And she says, better.
I mean, yes, definite improvement. Real cool. Still kind of want to leave, but you mentioned a deal, and still down with deals. And as long as they don't involve, keeping me in this admittedly comfortable space, totally down.
She turns away, and she drifts maybe 2 feet away, and she turns back around, and she says, I want something else, and I need you to get it for me.
Cool. Acquisitions. Easy. Super here for that. Just zip in, zip out. No problems whatsoever. I leave, bring you the thing, and we go our separate ways. Everything's fantastic.
Well, actually, she tips her head a little bit. in the wrong direct, like in one direction, and she tips it the other direction. And
Sure.
then she laughs a very peculiar laugh. You hear it behind you before you hear it in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, I want you to give me the faction.
So, first of all, not super familiar with the faction. Second of all, the experience I have had with the faction, not super positive. Also, kind of led to this thing, and points at the uh, anklet on his right ankle, and kind of leans back a second, and it's like, so faction also implies more than one person, probably lots of more than one person. And I feel like, well, yes, I feel real cool now, and this is awesome. That might be something that vaguely resembles a problem. And by vaguely, I mean absolutely.
Oh, but Zephyr, you must hear my plan, though. And she seems almost little girl excited. And she gets right up next to you again, and she's like, I want you to go with the gentleman who has put this on you. He will take you straight to the leader of the faction. And then she giggles, and again, you hear it behind you before you hear it in front of you. And she says, I want you to become the leader of the faction. And then you can use their power to get me so many things. And she spins around in little circles and comes back. And she's very serious. All the laughter is gone. And she says, you do this for me, and I will do more for you.
He kind of pauses for a second, and kind of you can watch the wheels turning. He's like, so to be super clear, you want me to hang out with a dude who wanted me to drag me to a place with this terrible thing that pulled me out of the air, which super not down with, for the record. And you want me to follow him, take over the people who wanted to take over me, and you will make me feel better about my life and choices? Is that accurate?
I'll take care of you. And you believe her, but take care of has so many connotations, and
Sure,
the
fucking
way
does.
she says it means all of them, including the good ones. But there's a finality to it that doesn't quite imply death, but it implies a foreverness.
So, I'm not usually super big on like the details and specificity and the fine print, but I feel like in this one particular instance, in particular, it might be vaguely important. You mentioned take care of. When you say that, you mean that I get to keep feeling better. You get to, I don't know, shower, be in riches and glory, and everything is fine from there, right? Yeah, it's totally fine. It's a good deal. I like it.
You get the weird grin again.
So that's not as descriptive as I would have preferred. Um, so I feel like we still haven't quite made a deal. And I mean, if that just means me hanging out here instead of, dudes trying to capture, murder, maul, etc. me,
Care, please.
um, totally down with that. I mean, kind of, but not really, because here is great, but not fantastic. Um, so yeah, I can just go. If you want me to feel less better and cool and awesome, totally fine. But maybe we just don't have a deal yet. That's fine too.
And she says, oh, I think we have a deal. And your pendant, when it wound down around you to the anklet, Once it reached the anklet, like you don't feel caged by it at all. But like it feels part of you. Wow, it's bound into your bones and all. And as she says, "Oh, we have a deal." You you become aware of those tendrils again, and then they fade away again. And she says, "Now, shall we skip to the good bit?"
I feel like your idea of good bit and my idea of good bit might be slightly different. That said, as a rule, I prefer good bits to possibly bad bits. So, yeah, let's go ahead and skip to that part. That'd be fine.
And she says, "Goody." And then she turns to what could be a wall and like rubs at it, like she's gonna rub the fog off of a window. And as she rubs away at it, you realize you're looking down at yourself from sort of an odd angle, and the laughing gentleman, and you're sort of leaned back like you're trying to get away from your own ankle. And she frowns, very very small frown, and she says, "That won't do." And then things move backwards as if in time to where the point where you are going to do Ray of Frost at your ankle, and you watch yourself shake your head, tip it sideways like you're listening, smile just a little bit, and it doesn't look like your smile. It looks like one of her smiles, not the big grin, but like one of the cocky smiles.
All of this is fine.
And then with a distinctly feminine step forward, you start to follow the gentleman. And after a step or two, your gait becomes your own again. But you watch yourself follow this gentleman out down into the inn. And then she pouts, like the woman beside you pouts a little bit, and then sort of like rubs at the spot on the wall again. And then you realize you're somewhere completely different. You followed this gentleman somewhere completely different. And I have to take just the quickest of breaks because
Right.
I have to rearrange the pets. And so, do you need to take a break too?
I mean, yeah, I can be down for that. I need
Okay.
to get more glasses to drink from, as Moons has
Yeah,
noticed.
what is that? Are you just messing with Stream, or do you need all
I'm
of those?
mostly messing with stream.
You're messing with Stream. All right. Well, they noticed. Good. Yes. So I've never done two cameras before, and Stream. We set this shit up literally minutes before Luth drew Brunches and Dragons, which I think looks great, and we kind of configured this all like just a little while ago. So what I'm gonna do is mute everything.
Cool.
Oh, I can just put up. I have a screen for this, don't I? I'm gonna put up a
Kinda
be
do,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna put up a be right back stream, but make sure you mute your microphone because it might still come through.
Yep.
And then we'll be back 5 minutes.
Cool. 12:05.
All right,
Just at the time.
stream. We will
Yeah.
be back in 5 minutes, and I will tell you what happens next. It's gonna be great, by the way. It's gonna be awesome.
Is it? Is it?
It's gonna be great. Okay, 5 minutes.
Okay,
We'll be
cool.
right back. Hello, stream. I'm just making sure all of the mics are unmiced. Looks like they are.
Probably.
Yep, that looks okay. Perfect. Now I have to move my cat butt off of the mouse. All right. We are back. Stream. We're back. Zephyr, we're back. So I believe I left off with, she'd sort of rubbed at the window she'd made, and it kind of fast forwarded to you were following the rider into another building. Now this building is very I think Zephyr would be able to tell that more than 5 minutes had passed. Probably something more like several days have passed.
Yes, this is fine. Sure. Great.
And you don't remember any of it. It's literally like you're seeing this for the first time. And so you're in a town you don't recognize from the view that you have.
Mm-hmm.
This building is definitely not one you've seen before.
Great.
And it's in a more residential part of a city, kind of like along the lines of like a townhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this is a nicer part of town.
Yeah, swanky digs. Got it.
Right. Yes, swanky digs, as it were. And you are being brought in the front door, as opposed to like a stable. And you're familiar with this part of town where, because it's mostly houses, the horses are probably kept elsewhere, and like carriages and stuff. You probably stepped out of a carriage to get to this house, all of which screams money. And then the image pauses as you are about to follow this gentleman into this house, and her body doesn't move, but her head kind of twists around. It doesn't twist all the way around to look over her,
like not full owl, but partial owl.
Like the way she looks over her shoulder at you just doesn't seem right somehow. And she says, "This spot. This will be good. Now, do you understand what you're to do?"
I mean, I feel like the deal was I get to go, but I mean, from what you said, there's a faction to take over that I really don't want to deal with, but I also, considering that, I don't know, it's been, what, hours, days, something. There has been time that has passed that I am not aware of, and I'm going to go ahead and blame that on you. And considering you're the kind of person, being, entity, something that can do that sort of thing, I probably don't want to fuck with you. Probably, just as a rule. Yeah, so sure, we've got a deal. We're going to hang out with the faction. We're going to take over the world or something.
Yay! And she does a little girl clap and says yay, just like that. And she says, "Wonderful. This will be so much fun. We will find power, and we will find, shinies, and we will have quite the time of it." And her attention seems to wander, and between 1 second and the next, you recognize this feeling, and you are standing in front of, you are between one step and the next, stepping into this house behind the rider. And as you do that, you remember the last 2 weeks, but at a distance. You remember having the conversation with that creature. You remember her changing Ray of Frost, so you have 2 sets of memories. One where you did Ray of Frost and all of the terror happened.
Mm-hmm.
and one where you didn't do that.
Yeah, this is
And
fine. Sure. Mm-hmm.
you remember following the gentleman. You remember the next 2 weeks being he's very closed mouthed, and you didn't try to ask him any questions.
Great.
You both took care of your own needs, and he got you a horse that looked very similar to his, and you traveled from the town you're in to this town. You've never heard, like, and he didn't even tell you what the name of the town was. And he didn't speak very much either, mostly to give you like go over there, those kinds of directions. And
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that really stands out to you through your last 2 weeks of memories is you were not compelled to do anything that you did. And the shackle on your ankle is no longer a shackle, but a very delicate anklet. And each of the links between each of the links are some strange stone. So the same stone that the shackle was made out of, but now they look like impressions of your pendant. And
Cool.
it's something you can slip off over your foot if you point your toe, or rest there. It's very comfortable. You're used to the feeling of it, and it doesn't weigh you down anymore. It actually feels just like your vests or your pendant. It feels good.
Yeah, it's kind of a great thing. Why would you take that off?
Right, exactly. So you weren't feeling compelled by the dude to follow him. You just did. You decided to.
Great. And he is leading me into the fancy part of town with a fancy house where there is a carriage that I presumably got off of, and because I'm the fancy genasi who rides in carriages now, and I guess this is my life.
Yes.
Great.
There is a butler-type human holding the door open, and he's holding his hand out, welcoming you into what looks like a very long hallway. Is that another cup?
Sure is.
And he, you see this butler-type human sort of look you over like he's gonna take a coat, but you don't have a coat. Does Zephyr wear shoes?
Yes, but they're like the really loose kind of sandals, not like flip-flops, but kind of like, these super like Roman with lots of straps sort of deal.
Yeah,
That's
great.
what we're working with.
And does he have a coat? Like, it's not winter yet.
Yeah, if it's towards the end of summer, then no, there's definitely no coat.
Okay. And the butler sort of like squares his shoulders, and he doesn't say anything. He recognizes the gentleman you're with, and the butler closes the door, and he's very neatly dressed in like a uniform of dark colors that actually match the colors that the gentleman's wearing. And the colors are like blacks and browns,
Okay.
with no metallics of any kind. And where the gentleman you've been working with, they're like leathers and working material, like materials you'd use to like do work in. The butler is wearing sort of a more utilitarian, uniform-esque type garment, but in the same colors. And you realize that both of them are wearing more black than brown. So the brown is more like a soft emphasis on the black.
Great.
And so the butler closes the door, and then he turns, and his movements are very precise. He's humanoid, and he might be human, and he's an older gentleman. He's sort of your typical butler, and
Alfred.
kind of little thinner, little taller, little more stiff. And as he turns and moves to another door on the hallway, he doesn't have to speak. His entire body language is indicating that you should follow him, and this is where you go next. Like, he doesn't have to say, and if you would be so good as to follow me. He doesn't have to say any of that. It's all in his body movements. He gets to the door, he opens it, and he gestures inside. The room is a sort of a drawing room, like a receiving room. So there's nice chairs sitting around, and normally these
How
rooms.
fancy is the chandelier?
So this room is oddly a combination of like a receiving room, which would have a low ceiling, and usually you don't see ceilings this tall with chandeliers unless you're like in a ballroom, or like there was a particularly interesting asymmetrical glass chandelier out in the hallway. In here, the ceilings aren't quite as tall as the hallway, but they're tall enough that there's a fixture on the ceiling that holds glass bowls that have floating candles in them, and they appear to come out from the light fixture in tendrils that look like wood but are most likely metal. And
Cool.
the
Great.
bowls are, you could set one on your head like a hat. That's how big it is.
Cool. Fancy. And the butler is ushering me sight unseen towards deeper into wherever this is.
Right. Now, this room has a piano in the back, quite big windows. This room looks right out onto the street, that have gauzy curtains so that nobody can, look in, and dark brocade.
Yeah, that word.
Yep.
Sure.
Heavy material. Curtains have been pulled aside to let a sort of weak, thank you, Kuma, sort of weak light in here. So the only light is actually from this fixture in the middle, and so there are shadows everywhere. Which, do you have dark vision?
Definitely don't.
Yeah, so they're fairly menacing type shadows then. The furniture is all very low, and heavy, sort of baroque-ish, and there's a couch with chairs bracketing it, a low table, and then another chair kind of on the other side of the table. And there is a and there's a fireplace, a huge fireplace, which has a huge fire in it on
Sure.
the wall opposite the door. And there's somebody standing by that fireplace. And that is the room that you are being gestured into.
Do I recognize this person by the fireplace?
Kind of.
Kind of in which way?
You remember how I said that when she laughed, you heard it behind you before you heard it in front of you?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to think of what you hear next is going from one side to the other rather than just happening like on your shoulder. And what you hear, it's less of you hearing something and more of you a knowing that is someone sort of inserting into your brain that this is the leader of the faction. And this person has been using the woman you met's name, and while she doesn't mind what he's doing with it, she actually wants, if they're going to use her name, then they're going to,
Sure.
she wants to be involved. And you know that she wants you to be the one to drive the faction from now on. That this is the person you have to get rid of.
Great. So I see this person, he's just facing the fire.
Yeah. He's shorter. He's probably only a little taller than 4 feet, and he's stout. He's in pretty good proportion to the rest of the furniture in the room. And you realize that this, as he turns around, that this is an older dwarf. He has one of those craggy, seamed faces. He's got broad shoulders, And he looks oddly stuffed into a suit, like he's not terribly comfortable, as if you've dressed up a warrior type.
And the beard is exactly how ridiculous?
Um, it's as if so he's got one of those big bushy beards that would have all the weird braids in it, but somebody has tried to tame it, and it's clear that he hasn't let them cut it or do stuff to it, but the braids and ornaments you see are in line with the clothing he's wearing. So it's sort of like the gentleman's version of the dwarf warrior type.
Cool. And are the butler and or rider in the immediate vicinity? Or are they hanging out by the doorway? Where are they in relation to me?
As you enter the room, the rider comes in with you, and the butler closes the door. Before the butler closes the door, the dwarf has turned around and he raised two fingers, and if you were looking at the butler, you would have seen him nod almost imperceptibly, and then he closes the door. The rider stays by the door.
Cool. But the dwarf is still by the fireplace, right?
Yes.
Cool. So Zephyr will kind of casually stroll across the room, drag a finger across the furniture, make sure it's not super dusty. If not, you need to definitely vacuum that because obviously. Casually strolls across the room, kind of rests an elbow on the mantle, which I assume is a little bit lower than it would be because dwarves.
Yep.
And he'll kind of loom over the dwarf, leaning a little bit closer than is necessary, taking cues from creepy smiling girl.
Mm-hmm. Which seems easier than you would have thought. Like as you decide to make that smile, like that smile happens, and you can see its effect on him is rather unsettling.
Yeah. And he'll kind of stoop down a little just to further invade that personal space. Mm-hmm. And after having spent some time with Creepy Girl and knowing exactly what it is she wants, and can he safely presume this is the leader of Unnamed Faction?
Yes, that was part of the knowing that was passed to you as you entered the room.
Great. He'll just, as he closes the space, just be like, I really like your organization. It's really impressive. The lighting, on point. Furniture could use a raise or two, but I mean, easily amended, totally fine. Butler, a little stiff. Might want to loosen him up a little bit, give him a drink or two. It's fine, totally amendable. Rider dude, definitely need to consider the horse situation. That whole thing is just a mess. It's fine. You know what? I can just fix all of it for you, and I really just suggest that you let me run this entire thing. And he's going to cast Suggestion.
Great. Yes, do that.
That is a saving throw from you.
Okay. And your DC is 13.
It is.
He does not save. As you're speaking, he's looking back and forth from you to the rider. And is Suggestion something that triggers after your speech, or is it sort of woven into how you're talking to him?
It's kind of just woven into how I'm talking. It doesn't last forever. It's only about 8 hours, I think. But yeah. I think it's long enough to start asserting things.
So you see it take effect as when you first start talking, he's sort of like, he's frowning a little bit, like, what is this dude talking about? He's looking back at the writer and looking at you. But as the suggestion takes effect, his face relaxes and he stops looking back and forth between the writer and you and starts, like, he's actively listening. Like, his body language implies that he's listening. And he's nodding as you get to the end of it. Like, yeah, that sounds right. Yes, okay. And he takes a step back and he's stroking his beard. And he says...
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's interesting, because what we have here is you messed up one of our... He wouldn't say messed up. He'd say, you interfered in one of our plans, which is why you were brought here today. Do you understand? And you remember maybe 2 months ago, right at the height of spring, you were feeling particularly euphoric one day where everything just sort of settled into place, and you watched these guys sort of set up a rather skillful drop, but there was just a little bit of a lag and a beat, and you were able to swoop in and pick up the drop instead, and you got a pretty nice haul of coin that day. And it was so perfectly timed that you were able to get in there, scoop up the coin from the dead drop, and then just levitate off into the sunset, and nobody saw a damn thing. And you even hung around for a while to listen in, and no one knew what happened, and you were feeling particularly clever. And you have that knowing again that is definitely not from you, of that's what he's referring to. And the knowing is, you know where this is from. You know it's from her.
Great. And he's just mentioned that I interfered in their operations.
Yes. And asked, like, do you know what I refer to?
I kind of do. Funny story about that. You really kind of just enjoy the panache and like finesse that came along with that. And really you just kind of just want to stroll out and let me handle everything because of the obvious brilliance that I've displayed for all of you. Nicely done, but I can do it better. Have a great day.
So there's no struggle here. He isn't struggling against the suggestion. He didn't roll anywhere near well enough. It wasn't a nat 1, but the strength of your suggestion seems odd to you, right? Like, you've used this kind of thing in the past to get past, you've never used it. This is so big. You've never used it this big, but you feel like there's someone else in this room, and you recognize her weight here. And it's kind of coming from the anklet, and it's kind of just coming from you. And you're getting all amped up. Like you're vibing. You're feeling very, very much you and centered and strong.
Drunk with power.
A little bit. You're riding that edge, right? Like you're not over the edge. You're riding the edge. And so this dwarf, as you're saying these things, right? Like, good job, but I can do it better. He's like, yeah, that your interference in our plans did show us that it could be done better. And he looks back at the writer like, yeah. And the writer's like, sure. Yes, if you say so, sir. And the dwarf is, that does indicate to me that we could use your services. Now, would you need me to completely step out of your way, or could I be of assistance? And so he's actually offering to not just, walk into the street and run away, but sort of remain behind and assist you.
Cool. As he says that, he'll kind of stoop over to dwarf height. And be like, I really appreciate the offer. Clearly, you've had a smooth operation going here, and you've really just done your best, and I'm impressed by that. But to kind of ease the transition, I don't think you necessarily need to be here. You know what? Let me just take care of, influencing all the people under your, my command. And he will use Mask of Many Faces to turn into the dwarf.
Awesome. Okay. What do you do about the rider who's still in the room?
Is he actively paying attention?
He's watching all of this happen. Like the dwarf was looking at him as he was saying, like, maybe it does make sense for you to take over. Like, that sounds right. And the rider was like, okay. Like he's actively paying attention. Would it make sense for Zephyr to have him leave the room before he does the Mask of Many Faces?
Yeah, that is the intent here.
Okay. So How about before you do that, you're talking to this guy, and he's agreeing. Like, that sounds good, right? Yes.
Mhm.
And you're talking about how you ease the transition, and maybe you say something like, why don't we talk privately? And the dwarf agrees, like, yeah, let's do that. And he sends the writer off, and the writer hesitates, like, you sure? And the dwarf dude is like, of course, we're good here. And as the writer hesitates again, the dwarf becomes more imposing somehow, and is like, the fantasy equivalent of did I stutter? Like, get out. And so the writer gets out, and the butler, as the writer's opening the door, the butler's opening the door, and there's like that weird. And the writer goes out, and the butler comes in and sets down like a platter of like cheeses and stuff and things, and the dwarf just ignores him, and the butler leaves again and closes the door, and that's when you whip out the Mask of Many Faces,
Great.
and then
Sounds
what do
fantastic.
you do?
So looking around the room, I've got plate of cheeses and lots of fancy furniture and basically a sense that everything is as it should be. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yeah.
I think he will, after surveying and taking what I assume is like a decanter of bourbon or brandy or
Yeah,
something
there's a
for
sidebar.
himself.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Um, Assuming that that exists, he'll kind of pour one of those, take
Yep.
a drink himself in dwarf form, have a really hard time with the beard because that shit's weird as hell.
Yeah.
And kind of reach over and brush against the anklet, assuming that that is some sort of connection, and be like, so, took over the spot, did the thing. You're welcome, by the way. Deal done. I can peace out now, right?
You feel a sense of delight as you're at like building as you're doing this, and when you do the Mask of Many Faces, you've actually managed to take her by surprise, and she's just there. The waves of delight coming off of her are weirdly childlike and ancient, and so that's feeding into some of your high as you're sipping on this bourbon as the dwarf. The actual dwarf is sitting across from you like, what the fuck just happened? But he's under suggestion, so he's not really reacting to it too hard. And between how do I want to do this? Every room has Luth says the chandelier falls and crushes him. Every room has noises, right? Like, you can hear the house creaking, you can hear the
Sure.
and all of that stops. There's no, and you stop for a minute too, as if you almost in reflex, as to match the silence, and you realize you're the only thing still moving. But then you realize that's not quite true. The chandelier is gently trembling, and she's standing up where it meets the ceiling, and she's looking down at you, and she says, I think it would be more fun if you remained.
So, funny story about that. I think the deal was to just take over the thing, not to continually monitor and own the thing. So I'd kind of really prefer that I hand it off to, I don't know, weird guy with weird horse and having a great time in his life with weird stone anklets. Anyway, I hand it off to him. Weird dwarf guy leaves, specifically not this weird dwarf guy, because for the record, not how I usually look. I hand it off to him. I get to leave. You get your whole faction thing, and everyone's happy. It's great.
She actually pouts, and it's weird that you can see her because it's she's lit from the candle. She's standing. She's not standing on the ceiling. Somebody asked in the chat. She's standing sort of like above where the bowls would be, and holding onto the chain that the chandelier's hanging down from. And she pouts and she says, "But I don't like them. I like you. I would like you to remain."
See, like I feel like I just said this. I mean, you're real high up there, and it's kind of dark, and I'm not sure if you entirely heard me. Um, but I, considering that I already took over the place, which was really all you wanted, I feel like I can go. I mean, I appreciate that you like me. I'm very charming and witty, and I mean, I look fantastic. Not like this because dwarfs are, you know, dwarves. But yeah, this has been fun. Thanks for the fancy anklet. That is far less terrible than the first one. And I can just, maybe monitor from afar.
She tips her head sideways. She looks down at the candles floating on water, and she twirls her finger like she's sort of like stirring tea above it, and the water and the flames start to rise up in very, very slow swirling motions, and they're sort of blending together, and this whole mess sort of goes over the edge of the bowls and starts to wind very slowly around the dwarf on the couch, who is frozen. And then
Sure.
as she kicks this off, this is going to happen in the background as she goes to step down from the chandelier, and instead of like traveling that whole distance, she just appears in front of you. And she's standing beside you, and you're both looking at the dwarf, and she says, "No. You are mine now, and I will not let you go." And you both stand and watch as the water and the fire continue to move very slowly around this dwarf, and it's finding chinks and openings in like everything, and sort of winding its way in there, and he seems to be melting up into, like, pieces of him seem to be melting up into the water and the fire. And it's all extremely slow. And she says, "You don't have to remain this," and she sort of gestures at all of you. "I can help, but think of all the power." And you realize that the faction, and this is a knowing she passes you again, the faction is all over this world. There are long cons and short cons. The guy that you just impersonated is in charge of so many moving pieces, it is not even funny. And what you said before, where it just needs a little more finesse, you were right. This guy took over from another guy who's kind of the genius behind the faction. And when he died, this guy took over, and he's been keeping it running, and it's running, but it's clunky. Like, it's running. You could really, this could be the making of you. This could be your challenge. You could be very comfortable doing this. And you already have like 5 ideas on how you can be yourself instead of this weird dwarf guy, and how you could get rid of the weird dwarf guy. It's a little harder because she's sort of melting him, the real one, but you could do it. Like, and you're still riding that high, and you're completely convinced, just like always, that you could do this. And when she keeps saying that you're hers, there's an it's not like a now thing. It's not like and she tips her head sideways, and she says, "I have other things to do. I need you here, and you won't hear from me much unless you need me." And she sort of cups her hands, and water pools there, and then it expands into a mist, like a ball of mist. And then she takes her hands and she pulls them parallel to each other but in opposite directions, and between her hands now floats an almost unseeable dagger. And as she moves it to you, you can hear it slice through air molecules. It is so sharp. And it hovers in front of you. And she says, I can help you. And this can be wonderful for you. And in those movements, you realize she's offering patronage to you. And all you'll need to give back is running this faction for her. And that is part of the promise that is wrapped up in this dagger. If you just take this, she'll continue to protect you. And as you're realizing that protection, you remember that utter terror of that ice moving up towards your heart. She saved you. She's protecting you. She's letting you live your life. She just wants you to do this cool thing for her while you live your life.
And seeing the dagger float through the air, and especially being as it is floating through the air, as that's something he's super comfortable with.
Well, I would also like to point out, as Chet pointed out, that it was slicing through air molecules. So there's menace there as well.
Oh, yeah, no.
Which is echoed in that terror that she's making you remember.
Yeah, and super aware of that. So it's this weird kind of middle ground of, hey, these things are floating through the air and the air is comfortable for me, but also she's super destroying the air right now, and that's terrifying because I'm a little air, that's a little air, the dagger is floating towards me at what I assume is like neck height.
It's more at chest height. Like a lot revolves around your inner core as a genasi.
Sure. So even worse, fantastic. So
yeah,
all of that
is evenly balanced, as if on the edge of a blade, the good and the bad.
Great. So seeing all of this and hearing the offer and kind of getting in the back of his head that kind of unrestrained terror that sinks into you while there are like tendrils crawling up towards your heart, because that feels fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Attempting to avoid that before it slices through any more air molecules, because he would really rather not hear that. He's just gonna kind of reach out and grab the hilt and, okay, sure, I can run this thing. I'll get it like second into command, like a lieutenant, someone to run things some of the time. I'll run things also some of the time. I'll, go out and wander here or there because I can't not. But, if it's a choice between this thing and, ice eating my heart and being stuck on the ground, it's not my favorite deal, but I guess you've got a deal.
And she says, yay! And it's gone. And this mess of fire and water and whatever that dwarf is made up of, the world unfreezes, and instead of it moving really slowly, it is moving breathtakingly fast, and is in fact sucking a lot of the air out of the room, and it swirls up through the ceiling, and the water and the fire is gone from the chandelier. It's just metal and glass now. And you are standing alone in this room. You look like that dwarf that just disappeared. You're holding what looks like a perfectly ordinary dagger. You're feeling much stronger again. And you know more things again that you're not quite sure how you knew. And all of these thoughts are occurring to you, like your mind is moving faster, about how you can still wander and run this. That wouldn't be hard. You'll need to wander, actually, to visit each of the sites of like the different headquarters. You'll need to put people you trust in charge and that she trusts. You'll need to touch each of those places to build your web so that she can have access to everything as well. And that'll be good for both of you.
Yeah, all of that is fantastic. Do I have any sense of where these other branches are, or where I might need to install people, or anything of that nature?
You do. So I'm setting these stories way back in the past from the campaigns I'm running with Treasure Tuesday, Shift, and Broken Bane. They're modern day Azinlia. These are set up long before that. And so the centers that you're aware of are distant, and there's much, much, much to be explored between them. And the fact that the faction has installed such a large worldwide organization is odd. And it was built on the back of merchants and just the darker side of merchants, the underside, if you will. And so you're aware of all of that from the world you used to live in, plugged in with your new faction knowledge. And you have an idea of where to get started. You need to consolidate things here. You'll want to put yourself in charge instead of the dwarf, and then you can move once your wanderlust kicks in. You can move to the next one, arrange things there the way you want them, and then keep moving. And that fits pretty well with. And the organization is working. You just need to finesse it. That's all. So it's not actually going to be a lot of work. You're going to have a lot of stuff at your fingertips, a lot of resources and stuff, and I think the tie to this patron is frustrating often to him. He realizes that when he sets down the dagger, like if he loses the dagger, if it's not on his hip or in his hand, or he takes the anklet off for some reason, he feels weaker. He feels slower. He doesn't feel as smart as he once was. He can't remember spells he used to know, and he doesn't feel fully himself. And so he takes to wearing the anklet and the dagger a lot. And because these are one-shots and I can make up whatever I want, I think throughout the years she visits him when she wants something tweaked. And every time she does, she gives you some new object. And you're not stupid. You realize the objects are tied to the power she's giving you. And she saves you a couple times. You have a weird run-in with a dragon turtle that appears in the middle of the straits of what end up being Nankaro, and you're like, why the fuck? She gets you out of that. She gets you out of... you end up going down into some weird dwarf dungeon castle stronghold thingy that you've never heard of before because there's some bauble she wants down there and you're just the one that has to get it. And you get into a hard spot there and she gets you out of that. And so you live a pretty long and very interesting life. And while you run the faction, mostly what you do is you get it set up so that she can have fingers on all of it. You put people in place in each of those places that she makes similar deals with. And overall, it's interesting. There are ups and downs, but before you met this weird lady who you come to call the mistress, you weren't really living. You weren't living up to your full potential. You're sure.
Yeah, sounds about right. I will say that his preferred method of getting between one place that needs management and the next, he tends to levitate up to the clouds and then thunder step away, and then cast Blink to kind of hop into the ethereal plane, which I assume she's hanging out in, and the next spot, and hop around that way.
Once in a while when you do that, she sort of like waves at you, like that little finger wave. But yeah, that sounds really fascinating. And I think that's probably how you keep some of the faction in line. Like you could just appear next to one of the dudes you've installed.
Yep.
I think Zephyr probably learns a lot from the weirdness of the mistress and sort of incorporates it wherever he can because it's fucking effective.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that's where we're going to end it today.
Cool.
As these are one-on-one one-shots. It's possible we'll meet Zephyr again in the future, or somebody completely different. I will... My intent is to use these kinds of things to help inform the history of the world that I'm using in my other three... Why am I running 3 games? My other 3 games...
You're a masochist, yes, we know.
I intend to use it as the history in the other 3 games. So I'd like to know, would you be okay with me using this in future Shift, Treasure Tuesday, or Broken Bane games? Now it'll...
Oh yes, please steal that.
It'll be the history of the history of the history because they're so modern, but it might provide some interesting backstory for some things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I think I can use this for Saturday's game. Might be kind of interesting.
Thinking what I think you might be thinking, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's it. It's very strange. I think that's it. Do you questions, concerns, thoughts?
No, I think that was really good. It was... Improv is not what I consider a strength of mine, and that went pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I think that went fairly well for 2 people that don't think we're good at improv.
But yeah, for the record, Genasi live around 120 years, so do what you like with that information.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't have a time period in mind.
I mean, like I said, do what you like. But
I like that. I think... Is that why you picked him? Because I told you I wanted to use it for history.
No, it's not. I just thought Genasi are cool, and I want to steal one.
Yeah, Genasi are neat. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, building out warlocks. A, warlocks are not my favorite class to play with, and B, building out a warlock that doesn't have Eldritch Blast is...
Yeah, that was interesting.
Super fun for me. Just as like a thought experiment.
I really liked that. Yeah, you really leaned into the air stuff, which I thought was very interesting. And with warlocks, you often see like the dark, crackly magic things, and yours was very different. I liked that. I thought that was neat.
Yeah, it was a super kind of fun character for me to build. It was a super like fun thing to deal with, just because warlocks and their patrons are kind of a big deal as far as like lore and roleplay and like impact on the world is concerned.
Yeah. And I really liked the idea of doing a short form of, because so often when you build patrons or build warlocks, like they pick their patrons and that's like backstory. I thought it would be really interesting to play through picking up a patron, like how one would do that. And like I said, I made it up on the spot, so I probably would have done it differently if it were more long form. I definitely would have done it differently if it were more long form. And I definitely hand waved a bunch of shit, which I appreciate you just being like, sure, yes, that happens.
No, and that was great.
But I thought that was kind of interesting, just the idea of how does one pick up patron. And it really does impact, like the patron really does drive a lot of the actions that the warlock has. I think it's, yes. ! Lore. It's fun. All right, well, I think that about wraps it up. Any other thoughts you'd like to share?
No, this was lots of fun. I think for the maiden voyage, it went pretty nicely.
Yes, I appreciate you joining me for this. I wanted it to go like this. I think it went like I wanted it to, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Whipping up a character in like 4 hours is super fun for me, just because that's the way my brain works. Good times all around.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Stream, we're gonna hop off. I will hang out in chat for a little while longer once I mute the, take down all the streamy stuff. And of course, you can find me on Twitter at like 7spoon. Any thoughts you have or suggestions, I'm very open to them. I think we'll be doing another one of these next Sunday, so come join us then. And we'll say, I guess we won't say goodnight, stream. This is so weird doing it in the morning.
We can do it.
We'll say bye-bye, stream.
Bye, stream.
We'll see y'all later.